Economic Indicators, Business Confidence Index. The BCI shows how the business economy is viewed within each country, or it presents the economic situation and climate. The BCI can also be used to check growth and anticipate curves in economic growth. It allows analysis of economic situation in short term and is usually published monthly or quarterly. The interpretation of the BCI depends on the methodology or approach used. However, the outcomes are always interpreted the same. That is, either respondents are optimistic or pessimistic about the outlook of the economy. Every quarter, CEO Art will conduct surveys asking questions about the overall economy, sectorial perspective, own business prospects, and key economic variables outlook. From the inaugural BCI survey, second quarter of 2023, the BCI for Zimbabwe was about 55 points, which is less than the base, 100 points. This implies that the respondents were pessimistic or bearish about the future outlook of the economy. The key issues highlighted for immediate attention in order to improve the business confidence in Zimbabwe are exchange rate, inflation management, narrowing the infrastructure gap, and fighting corruption. As we embark on the third quarter BCA survey, we call upon all key stakeholders to participate and complete the questionnaires for effective contribution towards establishing this significant economic indicator.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? How was everything else and then the golf? Not at golf. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here. What a pleasure to be invited to participate in this very important conference. I'm going to call onto the stage my colleagues who are part of this panel, starting with Honorable Chris Mutswanga, the Minister of Veterans of Liberation. Chris, please. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. And then former Minister of Finance and constitutional lawyer, my brother Tendai BT. And then last but not least, Seguruangu, Arsenal supporter, Nigel Chanakira, Zimbabwe Economic Society. Oh, sorry, Liverpool supporter, sorry. I thought I would shake him before he comes up and give him a team he doesn't like, which is my team. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an important conversation. I'm delighted that there was a prayer that was made as we were starting. And the verse that I want us to embrace as part of this session here is Colossians 4, verse 6. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each other. This conversation is about nation building. It's about talking about things that are important to us because like it or not like it, we have a shared destiny. This is our only home, and we need to find each other. So as I start, what I'm going to do is to give my colleagues 2 minutes, 3 minutes to touch on what they consider to be the key issues around bridging the gap between governance and economic development. And my understanding of what governance is all about is it touches on, it was interesting as we flew down, I flew down with my brother Tendai Biti, and he was reading a book on good state and bad state, eh? And yesterday, in preparation for this session, I was reading a fantastic book called Why Nations Fail, and another book called The Narrow Corridor by Darren Asamogu and James Robinson. So what is governance? Governance is about, good governance is about transparency as far as I'm concerned. It's about accountability. It's about, I would love a free mic so that I'm not tidy, unless there are rules that I shouldn't walk around. There are no rules, eh? Okay. So it's about transparency and accountability. It's about rules. It's about responsiveness of the state. It's about equitable and inclusive growth. It's about consensus and making decisions in a consultative manner. How does governance link up to economic development? I think that's the conversation that's going to be here. And I'm going to start with the Honorable Minister. International Minister, how do you see the linkage between governance and economic development in the first instance? And then secondly, Minister, what do you see as challenges that we're facing as a nation and the opportunities that we have in this space? Over to you, Minister. I thought we would have, oh, there's another mic here, Minister. Yeah.
Thank you, Comrade Trevor. And I want to address my dear friend, Minister Biti, and my Chanakira, Nigel. First of all, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I would have come yesterday, in which case I would have had a chance to meet many more of you and networking and get to know who you are. But in the event, I had another assignment. My boss came yesterday, the president, and I had to remain in Harare doing certain things. You know, I had to have a press conference on topical issues. I just want to start by trying to identify whom I'm talking to in a very quick way. How many are of the CEOs or who are here, how many are from outside of Zimbabwe? Any hands? Oh, thank you. Would I quickly get to know which countries? Quickly. Yes. The other one? Thank you. The other one? Zambia. Oh, thank you. Always good to have your neighbors come to your event. There's no better support than being supported by your neighbors. So by and large, we are with Zimbabweans. I want to just be very brief in my introductory remarks and highlight a certain thing. Governance and national development. I am very happy that in the last 5 years, we have had a paradigm shift in the governance of this country, where vision is actually the driver of where we are going as a country, and that is coming from President Mnangagwa. I rooted for him to be where he is. I had experience with the former government, and I had great disappointment when I went into cabinet. And I want to be very frank with you as Zimbabweans, that if ever one day you shall read the minutes of the final 2 decades of the Second Republic, you go and pray in church like somebody was doing here to say, how did we survive? Because we basically had cattle head boys in cabinet, and the country was going nowhere. And that's what made me break with the former president. I'm showing you in front of you, that's a picture. This is picture in Indonesia, maybe it's not in Zimbabwe. That's my wife. And in the middle is a young man. Then he is the country CEO of a company called Tsingshan Holdings, Tsingshan Group Holdings Zimbabwe. But also he works for Tsingshan Holdings global. His name is Benson Shu. He has been in Zimbabwe since 12 years ago to set up industries in Zimbabwe. That visit is 2013 at a place called Morowali in Indonesia. I think everybody has got a phone. As I speak, try to type on your phone and these following words, Morowali. M-O-R-O-W-O-L-I. I need water. I am a little, I'm dry a little bit. And if you type those words, just go to images. If you type those words, Morowali Industrial Park, that's in Indonesia. So briefly, those soils are red. That means they contain iron ore. That's nickel laterite, that's nickel. We have a similar place in Zimbabwe which is red, which contains iron ore, and it is called Manise. The soils are similar. Now, if you look at that picture and then you look at your phones and see what Morowali is today, you will see the difference. It's a town of 60,000 people, and this is within this is from 2013 to where we are today. That bush becomes a town of 60,000 people with 4 Fortune 500 companies operating from that place. You see the airports which are on your phones. Now, if we had moved the same way in 2014 as the president of Indonesia did, that's what Manise would be like, exactly what is on your phone, Morowali. But I am not trying to make issue with the former government. I'm trying to arrest your mind to the fact that Manise is going to be like the pictures you are seeing on your phone. We are going to have a town of 50 to 60,000 people within the next 3 to 4 years. Why? Because of the investment in the ferrochrome, in the steel, which is at Manise, and we will be producing carbon steel. How are we doing it? We are doing it with the most competent company on the globe today in steel production. For every 4 teaspoons you have, they manufacture 1 or 2. It's called Tsingshan. Now moving where they are dealing with nickel. In Zimbabwe, they are dealing with carbon steel for construction, all the construction, including this building. You can see the other picture which has just been flighted. This is their design for the Forbes border post for the transportation of steel to Mozambique. That's what's going to be the Forbes border post for this project, for those who come from Mutare. And a new port is coming up in Mozambique. It is being built right now. It will be a port of 120,000 meters built by this company. What am I getting to? I'm saying President Mnangagwa has looked at the resources of Zimbabwe. He has seen that these resources which God was generous to give us, they are world-class. And he has decided to go to seek world-class companies to come and exploit those resources so that we can have made in Zimbabwe goods for the global market in the, being produced from Zimbabwe. This is where we are going with the president. And I'm just citing steel, the carbon steel ecosystem, because it will involve ferrochrome. The whole Great Dike from Shamba to Gwanda will be mined to support the ferrochrome, to support the steel plant, which I think for those who watched the news yesterday, you saw what's happening at Manise. In December, we started producing steel. Beyond that, we are not far from Vic Falls. There is the Wange coal fields. They are now producing coking coal. We are now a major exporter to South Africa. The same company has jumped from 200,000, from 0 to 3 years ago to 600,000 tons of coking coal to Zimbabwe and the region in the last 3 to 4 years, and they are going to 1 million tons. And the same company is also doing building a new town completely in Beira for the manufacture of electric batteries for the global market. They supply Tesla, they supply VW, they supply all the major, What I'm saying to you is that something big is hitting Zimbabwe. And for Zimbabweans, we have been used to say Old Mutual is a big company. Zimplats is a big company. wake up. This is the scale at which the president is moving. A Fortune 500 company, turnover 60 billion, number 238 on the global stage. This is the company. The last point I want to add is that this is not just carbon steel where the president is focusing. In lithium, the best out of the 10 top billionaires in the whole world doing lithium, 6 are in Zimbabwe. And we will be what Saudi Arabia is with the fuel fossil industry. We will be the supplier of batteries as we move to new electric batteries. I am here to try to make you leap in your mind so that you have vision. Because I come from a generation of vision. You don't leave school and university to go to war and say, I'll die unless you have a big vision. And then that vision be realized. I am only trying to say governance and economic development requires a leap in vision. And the president is marrying our resources to the global capital, which will make this country move forward. I thank you.
I'm delighted, Minister, that you talk about our resources. I'm going to, just a quick question, Minister. What about the transparency and accountability? Are you happy, one, with the quality of the investors? You're saying they are Fortune 500 investors. What about the transparency and accountability? I'm sure to a lot of people, this is breaking news that you've just shared here. If you could just respond to that, Minister.
Transparency and accountability, you see, I deal with prejudice all the time. The moment you hear that Chinese have become investors, and then you are dealing with NGOs, then you start to think that we are being exploited. Unfortunately, you know, that is not the truth. Zimbabwe's iron ore is far from the ocean. If we were to do like China or South Africa, I mean, if we were to do like Australia or what, we would not export iron ore because we are 600 to 700 kilometers from the ocean. That's why that place, Manise, never had any investment up to date. The difference which has come with Tsingshan is saying we are a private company of global stature. We want to produce steel at source so that we have the advantage of the availability of resources to produce at lowest cost so that we maintain our position in the world as the best producer and cheapest producer of steel. So it means that they've decided to come and invest in Zimbabwe. It means that the skills which are needed to produce steel are in Zimbabwe. It means the products which they are going to be producing world class, this is not for import, for internal consumption only. They will be produced in Zimbabwe by Zimbabweans for the global market. Now, if that is not what is called development, I don't know what else is called development. To have the resources of to have the capabilities of a world-class company come into your country and produce, and that's what everybody else does in the whole world. You go into a country, you invest, and you produce there. You are a citizen, a corporate citizen of that country, and that's what they are doing. And for just as a reminder, a rejoinder, because of the high skills level of Zimbabweans to transform them from skills, from education to skills, they've realized they don't need to bring Chinese to do a lot of these things. You Zimbabweans quickly just catch up because we jump into knowledge, from knowledge to skill better than any other country in Africa. So we are having the biggest transfer of skills, which will make Zimbabwe a world-class producer of steel parts and widgets and everything for cars, as good as any in Japan, Korea, or Germany. I thank you.
Okay, there's a question that was not answered, and this is the big debate. My brother Tendai, I think within the context of governance, for a country to function properly, it must have a state that is strong, but it must have a civil society that is strong. It must have labor that is strong. It must have parliamentarians that are able to stand up and ask questions. The minister, I did ask about, what about the transparency? in terms of the investors coming into the country. As you get into the issues, my brother Tendai, of what are the key takeaways for you as governance and economic development are concerned? If you could respond to some of the issues that Chris raised here. Over to you, Tendai. I think you've got a mic there. Over to you, Tendai.
Well, thank you very much, Trevor. It's a privilege to be here to talk to fellow Zimbabweans and also our brothers and sisters from the neighboring countries. The theme of this conference centers around the African narrative, the issue of the African Renaissance. How do we build a strong, sustainable Africa? How do we build a strong, sustainable Zimbabwe? And why is it that 6 decades after independence, much of Africa still lags behind the global community, the global standards? You referred to Robinson and Asemoglu's seminal book on why nations fail. I think the starting point must be leadership, strong leadership, with a strategy, strong leadership with a vision. But this leadership is generated somewhere. It's generated by the citizens. It's generated through an electoral delivery system that can actually deliver. And sadly, on the African continent, the issue of challenged elections becomes central to the production of a certain type of leadership. We also need strong institutions, strong parliaments, strong civic society, the rule of law, and all these things. The issue of a common vision is key. The issue of a vision is key. The issue of accountability is key. I was looking at some of the frightening statistics on the African continent. At independence in the 50s, in the 60s, our per capita income was around 1,200. 6 decades later, the average per capita income in Africa is 1,500. Zimbabwe, by the way, is around 1,200. Why is it that we still have these conflicts? In the past 2 years alone, we've had about 6 coups, particularly in the Sahel area. Coups in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in the Central African Republic, in Niger, in Chad, and so forth. We have unstable states, and part of the reason why we have unstable states is because the state, to many others, is an arena of personal accumulation. The state, to many people, is an arena of the reproduction of the tribe, the family. The state, and I come to the issue around Manize, which Chris spoke about. It's important to have strong institutions. It's important to have strong, legislation. We have a public procurement act that demands that whatever we do must go to tender, whether it's construction of roads, construction of airports, and so forth. In Africa, many of those laws are made more in breach than in compliance. There's nothing wrong with investment. We actually need investment, but investment must go through our country's due process. Manize is sitting, and I think many of you actually don't know that we actually have one of the world's biggest resources, one of the biggest deposits of iron ore, about 40 billion metric tons of iron ore. A few years ago, an Indian company called ESA actually came into Zimbabwe and actually invested in Zimbabwe. But it pulled out of Zimbabwe because it was not allowed to have access. So it was given the infrastructure at Zisco still, but it was not allowed to have access to the iron ore. So many Zimbabweans do not know how, for instance, who actually is constructing at Manise. I first learned it today. What is the connection between the company that is constructing there and the 40 billion metric tons of iron ore that is actually there? Did this contract, was this contract actually subjected to to tender? These are questions that need to be answered. But speaking generically, I think to build a sustainable state, as I've said, it's so important to respect constitutions and to have constitutions with constitutionalism. It's so important to have the rule of law. It's so important to have elections that actually deliver. It's so important to carry everyone on board. It's so important to have a common vision. It's so important to have strong institutions, particularly a strong independent judiciary. Anything else renders sustainable to wars, sustainable to coups, sustainable to fragility, sustainable to vulnerability. And regrettably, that is the balance sheet of Africa in the last 60 years.
I see my brother Chris is shaking his head. Chris, you will have an opportunity to respond to the issues that that Tendai has said. I thought, in fairness, you will respond, Chris. Will respond to. I'm very even-handed. There's no rigging here. So, Nigel, you've had the conversation taking place already, which raises issues of national resources, transparency, and accountability, the importance of a strong state, of strong institutions all across. You know, the book that Tendai refers to, for instance, says, and I'll quote, "We need a state that has capacity to enforce laws, control violence, resolve conflicts, and provide public services, but still be tamed and controlled by an assertive and well-organized society." My question to you is, do we have an assertive and well-organized society to push against some of the issues that Chris has already raised, some of the issues that Tendai is already questioning, that Chris has put on the table to us? Do you want to engage with that issue?
Sure, Trevor, and good morning to all the viewers and all who are here present, Minister and my brother Tendai. I think we must realize, Trevor, that we are in a globally competitive environment where at this particular point in time, liquidity in global capital markets is scarce. And that scarcity speaks around the wars we've seen and the war that's evolving. You know, global inflation is up, liquidity is very tight. And so you want, as a nation, to put your best foot forward so that you can attract global capital. We, as a nation, have a very, very low, if not negligible, savings base in terms of domestic savings. That is the formal indicators, of course. I think Neva gave figures earlier on, or around 2.6 billion, and then in the informal markets, probably about 7.5 billion banked at National Mattress Bank, which I think is a great pity as a nation, because we should really be utilizing those savings in the formal financial markets so that we can actually complement any activity that is coming through that private capital that the minister has made reference to. And his commendations, I think if you can attract, the ilk of the investors that we've seen, that's great. And, my quest would be to have that scale of investment across the board and not just in a specific sector. And that gives us, I think it puts us at a disadvantage somehow, given the wealth of resources that we have. And when I say resources, I want to put the manpower there in terms of capacity that we have. And we are in that boxing ring globally competing with over 200 nations. If we look at sub-Saharan Africa with the 45 nations that are there, the question is, and as a former ZIA chairman, having entertained a lot of these investors, they want to see that stability in terms of macroeconomic stability. And so if we can have that, then we can have global capital complementing domestic capital and participation on the part of local investors, the CEOs that we see here, Trevor. My fright is, are we capable of competing in the African continental free trade area and punching within our weight? And sadly, I would tell you, no. The bulk of our businesses as they stand, unless they actually wake up and stop overpricing and become more competitive, look for technologies, look for capital, if we can, and have stable macroeconomic environment, we're going to be flooded potentially with more competitive companies, more agile companies and local and government itself. For example, if you look at procurement, are we procuring at competitive prices so that we can actually go out and export? And that's where my worry is. And are we attracting international capital to a large extent or to a comparatively acceptable level, you know, in line with what our neighbors are doing? Those then point to the areas of governance. And when we talk about governance, Trevor, I always, and I was here last week, I want to point out one specific issue. The political risk premium that is attached to Zimbabwe renders us less competitive compared to other nations. And so our domestic players, in terms of being able to go out and punch within their weight category and have large production runs, to be able to scale up and export just into the neighboring countries, is where we are found wanting. Those would be my concerns. Thank you.
Wow, those are big issues, Nigel. Are we competitive CEOs? And I think you raise an issue which is hugely important, that sometimes we think that we're playing in the domestic market only. And yet, for us to be able to be competitive, we need to scale up on our talent, scale up on our technology, and realize that our market is out there. And you also raised the issue of the political risk premium, which is a huge thing. Chris, two very big issues raised. You are shaking your head. By the way, you are not under inquisition. This is a debate. Please respond to the issues that have been raised.
I prefer to stand up because I started from the beginning by citing a company which is a global level company, which is the best in that particular business, even in America or wherever. What I wanted to jolt your minds about was to scale up in your mind. Because if you can't have scope and scale, then you continue to look in the rear view mirror where you are coming from, which is what Minister Beat is talking about. Whilst on my part, I'm looking through the windshield to say, where are we going as Zimbabwe? And we are going straight ahead of everybody in the region, of everybody in Africa, in terms of the growth of this economy in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. That picture in Indonesia, which I showed you, was Indonesia when it couldn't produce a ton of nickel, in processed nickel, in 2014. Today, Indonesia is the #1 producer, is the #2 producer of nickel, stainless steel nickel. That's why I cited you about steel spoons. Here's a country which was like Zimbabwe, which was rich in a certain resource, nickel, which has attracted world-class investment to be #2 after China. We have 600, 700 kilometers of ferrochrome from Shamva to Gwanda. We are number 2 or number 3 in the whole world. We have the coal at Wange here, which is the best in the region, which can produce coking coal. We have the limestone, and we have this deposit which is talking about. All these things are there together. Anybody here who is being told to be a businessman, you have been here for years, those things were there. With your little money, which you think is big capital, you couldn't do anything to it. And even if you are as proud as anything, you can't do anything to it because the capital which is required for a project of this nature is way beyond you. It's way beyond us. And every country has to go to the capital markets in the world today, 90 trillion US dollars of capital on the global market. Only 6 trillion is available in the World Bank and IMF, which my friend Beatty loves to quote about. The rest, 90 trillion, is at Wall Street, at the Japan Stock Exchange in Tokyo, at the Stock Exchange in London. That's where you go and look for money to develop your country. And if you guys want to be anything in the future, don't listen to the rare review talk which is being said about here. You talk about trying to get commensurate capital to marry to our resources, to marry to the best brains on the African continent, the most educated country on the African continent. That's what will make you rich, not being made to look at all these governance issues which are totally frivolous. They are metaphysics. This is metaphysics which is being talked about. You want to be rich, I'm telling you, I'm saying this because I have been the driver of these projects. I know their implications on the national economy. I know all their implications on where Zimbabwe will be in terms of producing world-class goods. We will be producing powertrains for electric vehicles from Manise in the next 3 years. Because where this company goes, Toyota goes, follows, Mercedes-Benz follows, Ford follows. This is what is going to happen at Manise. We have to have a new airport there. Steel merchants cannot come from Europe and then drive from Harare to Manise to buy steel, because the steel which will be produced at Manise is the best. I showed you the border post which is coming up at Forbes border post in Mutare. That's massive. That's exporting 4 to 5 to 10 million tons of steel. And you are being told that you want to say we have capital. What capital do we have? We don't have that capital. I thank you.
You've really stirred the hornet's nest. CEO's corporate governance is what? Frivolous. Perhaps not corporate governance, but good governance is frivolous. But you know, I believe in freedom of expression. That's what Chris believes. But Nigel spoke about political risk being high. And the issue was raised about the transparency and accountability regarding that. Is it a question of Chris not communicating well? Should this CEO here be hearing for the first time about the arrangement? Is it poor communication? And if it is poor communication, Chris, what does that say about inclusivity in decision-making and implementation? Do you want to respond to that? And also on the political risk thing, because I think it's important too.
Yeah. Part of it is real poor communication, because what President Mnangagwa is doing with our resources is at a level which is commensurate to the global standards. The investors who are here, the guy who is doing steel in Manise is a billionaire, turnover 60-something billion per annum, global. He manufactures steel for the Department of Defense in Philadelphia to make American submarines. They wanted to sanction Chinese companies. They couldn't because his technology is way ahead for the quality of American steel. He is in Indonesia, he is everywhere. So the point I'm making is that the president has identified the resource base of Zimbabwe, and we are number 4 in diamonds. We are number 3 in ferrochrome. We are number 2, we are probably the top in Africa in coking coal. We are this. So he looks at what God gave us. Then he says, who can make this be turned into riches? Then he goes and looks for companies which are capable. That's why he says Zimbabwe is open for business. People are not appreciating what the president is doing by bringing a world-class investor like this. And because all of us, we grew up in Rhodesia where we believe that, small is big. When something like this happens, we have a wall, a firewall in our heads. We cannot see what is being done by the president so that you can properly adjust as a CEO to become rich because of the investment of this scale which is coming up. You are not adjusting. I want to tell you, I took a businessman, a very prominent businessman, he's my friend, to my knees. He thought he was big. By the time he left there, he was humbled. He says, I didn't know that foreigners are coming to put such infrastructure in my country, world-class infrastructure. I'm telling you, there's a town of 60,000. I go to Old Mutual. I mention a name. You are investing in real estate. Can you build a town of 60,000 in anticipation of what's happening in Manisa? Because in the next 2 months, steel will be produced there.
But Chris,
So I'm telling you that the issues are, and this is risky capital. It's not government funds which go for tender, comrade. These guys who invest, they go to countries. If there's an offer from a particular country which entices him, he puts his money. You can't tender for risky capital. He looks at what you have and he takes his own risk. You tender for his money and you try to give him conditions and walk away. Then you end up with nothing. So it's called risky capital, and all of you must understand what risky capital does. It looks for opportunity. Then the last point you were saying.
Political risk.
The political risk. Yeah, I told you about the political risk which existed before in the First Republic. I was frustrated. I was there only for 1 year in that cabinet. I gave up. The political risk is to have a bunch of nitwits who are saying in cabinet, who say we must stop exporting ferrochrome, chrome ore to China until they build furnaces because they want to indigenize. What did you do? The guy says, I will not put in money in your country if you've got a gun on my head. I want to be free in your country to invest. Don't force me. So the Chinese abandoned the buying of ferrochrome from Zimbabwe. At the same time, they are building the biggest building construction ever in the history of humanity is going on in China. There is no ounce of Zimbabwe chrome in China, and you want to be prosperous. What does it do? The railway line collapses because it can't carry chrome. If it can't carry chrome, it can't carry wheat to be sustained. So the whole railway line from Shamba to Gwanda, all the way to Beira, collapsed because there was no load. Because nitwits were in cabinet saying we indigenization, we want to have this. President has changed that. That's what is called changing political risk analysis to make capital come to this. And the same thing is happening in lithium. The best billionaires in the world are in Zimbabwe today. The top ones in the whole world. And what's going to happen in the next 3 to 4 years, we start producing batteries in Zimbabwe for the global market. And this capital has no color. Don't say it's Chinese capital or it's American capital. Capital has no color. I just want to finish off by one thing which may not be looked at. Currency risk. Everybody has got money in your pocket in US dollars. If you look at your $100 notes, they are all crispy new. Do you realize? If you make a mistake one day, you brush your chin, it may burn you because it's coming straight from New York. It's still warm. Why is it? How? And then you look at the other notes which you have, the $10 notes, they are all crumbled and finished. Why? Because these came a long time ago and they were coming from probably an allocation of the American government to Zimbabwe and they've been wasted. The new ones which are coming, do you know where they are coming from? 6 years ago, gold digging in Zimbabwe for SME was illegal. I was the chairman of the war veterans at Masvingo. We made a resolution to say, why do we stop our young people from digging gold when the history of Zimbabwe is 800 years of gold digging? They were legalized because I went into cabinet. They were producing 5 tons 26 years ago. Today they are producing 28 tons. Those are not Scott Vanemari. They are producing gold. 1.6 young people, 6 million, are digging gold. Some of them, they die because the industry is growing faster than they can be safe. But what does it do? What does it do? A plane leaves every night to Dubai. The notes leave the Federal Reserve System. I'm from finance in New York. That's my degree. The notes leave New York, they go to Dubai. They meet our gold. The notes which are in your hand, they are earned by the people of Zimbabwe. They are not an allocation from the American government. The more we dig gold, because other countries get money by selling goods like we do, then you get hard currency. Zimbabwe has the advantage that we dig money because gold is everywhere.
Thank you,
Let
Chris.
young people dig gold, we have more money, and we have a stable currency, and we defeat inflation. For the first time, we went to an election without inflation because the president had stockpiled gold. And that made sure that the party which is on my left, they couldn't use inflation as a tool in urban areas. They lost a lot of vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read Colossians 6:4 again. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each other. Tendai, a lot of issues were raised, which you before I give the mic to Tendai, Tendai was going to answer sitting down, but also Sibuka Manje. Tendai, there's a number of things that the minister has said, and you do concede, minister, that in terms of communication, there are issues. So if you could respond to that, but I hope you note, good friends, that the minister says he took one of the biggest businessmen to that place. This businessman didn't know that thing is happening. And I'm saying, minister, can we communicate better? If you want these people to be part of what you're doing, these people ought to know what is happening, rather than to fly to Victoria Falls and be breaking news from Chris in Victoria Falls. Tendai, if you could please respond as much as you can.
Thank you. I think the first thing that we have to be honest about is the toxicity of our politics and how this country is paying a price because of the toxicity of that politics. We have had around 13 elections since 1980. And if you measure the period that we've had elections, we've had an average, in every 4 years, we've had an election. And each one of those elections has been contested, been disputed, including the just ended harmonized election on the 23rd of August 2023. The report produced by the SADC Election Observer Mission on that election is the most damning condemnation of any election that you can see in recent times. And that puts a premium on our development. That puts a premium on our attractiveness as an investment destination. Most importantly, it underlines a discourse of discohesion, a discourse of disunity, a discourse of intolerance. The new parliament was only sworn in a week ago, but as already as I'm talking to you right now, that parliament has been weakened by unconstitutional recalls of over 15 or so members of parliament. So before we have begun, an important institution such as parliament has already been paralyzed. Local authority has already been paralyzed. So we're going to reproduce the lackadaisic status quo, the indifferent status quo, the conflict status quo of 2018 to 2023. We're going to reproduce it from 2023 to 2028 with the consequent arrested development of Zimbabwe, slow growth rates, 3% growth rates, 2% growth rates, negative growth rates, where we could be having a sustained growth rate of at least 9% per annum. Our GDP right now is around $18 billion. In 1980, Trevor, you are the economist, I'm not. In 1980, our GDP was a mere $7 billion. Zambia was $3 billion. Kenya was $7 billion. Fast track, 44 years after independence, Kenya is a $264 billion economy. Zimbabwe is an $18 billion economy. Zambia is now a $64 billion economy. What is the difference? The difference is leadership. What is the difference? The difference is our toxicity. So we need to confront the elephant in the living room, which is our ugly politics, our extractive politics, our vicious politics, our predatory politics. We need to address that. Address the issue of resources. It is true that Zimbabwe is a rich country. We've got 63 minerals. And of those, 4 or 5 of them, we have got world-class deposits. World-class deposits in gold, world-class deposits in platinum, world-class deposits in chrome, now world-class deposits in lithium. But this country is not benefiting from these minerals. I said we've got 63. There's a country a few kilometers from here called Botswana. If you travel 90 kilometers to Kazungula border post, you are in Botswana. It has got one mineral. The per capita income of Botswana is US 6,500. The per capita income of Zimbabwe is US 1,200. But they have one mineral, we have 63. 63. And the difference is that Botswana has managed its one monomineral transparently. Its agreement with the De Beers group is transparent. Revenue flows from De Beers is transparent. We can't do that with our 63 minerals. And our accumulation model is faulty. If you take diamonds in Botswana, they've got a huge factory outside their airport which cleans and polishes those diamonds at a greater cost than India. In India, in Botswana, polishing diamonds is $30 US. In Botswana. In India, you can get away with $10. Same is in Israel. It's much more expensive, but the Botswana government forced the Beers to say, we will process these diamonds here. So the problem in Zimbabwe is that, number one, we are selling these mining nations opaquely. We are selling nations without any due diligence. So Manize is given, we don't know who was given and on what basis. Zimplats in Ingezi was given that resources, we don't know what price they paid. I was Minister of Finance, I saw the agreement. That agreement, if it had been subjected to Parliament, no Parliament would have, passed that. We have just concluded Wange 7 and 8 on energy. I looked at the agreement, $1.5 billion, dollars, something that could have cost us $800 million. And our accumulation model is also false. Cecil John Rhodes died in 1907 or thereabouts. The accumulation model he left was that you export minerals in raw form. These investors are flocking to us. Chris was talking about an expanded Forbes border post. He showed us a picture. They are building right now, as he said, they are deepening the port of Beira to enable huge ships to actually come and collect this raw iron ore from Manize. So, if you were to wake up,
Chris, but you will have your time, Chris. You'll have your time. You'll have your time. You'll have your time.
If you were to
let's not rig the system. You'll have your time.
Trevor.
Yes, please, Tendai.
If you were to wake up Cecil John Rhodes now from his lofty grave at Matopo, he will not get lost in Zimbabwe's production cycle because the accumulation model 120 years later, it's still the same. It's still extraction, extraction, extraction. I take lithium. Lithium is now the black gold. A ton of lithium costs US $80,000. So it's the most valuable mineral, much more valuable than gold. But you've got trucks, huge trucks, that are exporting raw lithium through Forbes border post to Sofala, now known as Beira. How can we allow the raw exportation of lithium from places like Bikita when we could easily force them to build refineries that will process the lithium so that we can use it for mobile phones, for car batteries, and for the decarbonization of our country?
Thank you,
Take
Tendai.
platinum, last point,
Okay.
platinum. Platinum is a dangerous metal, because when you mine platinum, there are 6 other metals that come from it. Rhodium is one of them. Palladium is one of them. Now, because we don't have a refinery in Zimbabwe, what is accountable to us is a tiny fraction. They've been mining for 20 years. We've failed to insist that a platinum refinery be built. We've even failed to force them to actually go and refine part of the platinum at Bindura nickel mine, because there is a nickel refinery, and nickel is also a metal. So we are failing this economy through opaqueness. We are failing this economy through failure to understand the value of what we are dealing with. We are failing to develop this economy through failure to transform the accumulation model. And lastly, we're failing this economy through toxic, contested politics.
Thank you. You've made your point. Nigel Diseguru wangu, I'm sure you understand how important it is. Seguru, do you want to respond to the issues? There's a contestation here. But you also raised important issues around talent, around competitiveness, which we have not dealt with. But do you want to engage in any of the issues that have been raised here?
Sure, Trevor. And I for the record, I want to say, Kuna Minister Chris, when you point to the left and you say the party on the left, for the record, I'm no politician. Okay, all right, yeah, just to make it clear, Nandabata needs some crossfire, so I want it to be very clear. I'm an investment banker, and an investment banker, Trevor, has got to be a bit classy. He's not going to stand up, he's going to sit down. But having said that, I think on a serious note, I want to really focus with Minister Mutrangwa. Minister, I implore you, you sit in cabinet. I would implore you to— Since 2 weeks ago, congratulations, by the way. I did see you and congratulate you last week.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yes. Now that you are in cabinet and knowing you, and I know you can speak truth to power, I would like you to remind your boss, our president, of a conversation that we held in 1998 in Kadoma. And he represented the government of Zimbabwe. It was called the Kadoma Declaration. And he was part of the debates with labor, with bankers, with the private sector. And he and July Moyo represented the government of Zimbabwe. And we concluded jointly that the political risk premium for Zimbabwe was too high. And he conceded. He conceded at the time that it was too high. But he made one undertaking, and this is a very clear reminder. He made one undertaking. He said to us in that meeting there is one thing that you youngsters can never do, which we can do, which is to deliver the land. Allow us to deliver the land, and then we will reduce that political risk premium. Now, as an investment banker, I still go back to say that premium, comparatively, is still far too high. Minister, I do business in the region. I am better off, yes, I may be a small businessman with a small balance sheet, but the capacity for me to do business in neighboring countries is a lot easier and cheaper financially than it is for me to do business here. And I would much rather do business here. I would rather, set the base here and compete from here. But the capacity to compete is just next to impossible. And we've got CEOs here. I'm sure Trevor's going to open up the conversation. Doing business here, where our infrastructure costs are very high, where our exchange rate is unstable and unpredictable, and we are competing when we are having triple-digit or double-digit inflation, much, much higher than the single-digit inflation that is experienced elsewhere, renders us uncompetitive. So I really implore you that on the political risk premium, zvukutarwa naTendai zvetoxicity yakawandisa, Minister. I really say that from the bottom of my heart, whether these are political games, kana dziridzo politics zacho, it's not working in terms of attracting international capital. I'm telling you, no. This is the audience, because I want to make a final point, Trevor. Because we cannot run any economy without developing our people as well. We cannot run any economy without developing our entrepreneurs as well, to give them a fighting chance to be able to access capital on the same terms as people in neighboring countries. Finally, Trevor, economic theory, coming back to economic development, there is what we call the trickle-down effect in terms of economic benefits that would accrue to the masses. And if our masses, if our CEOs do not have access to resources at competitive levels, with either foreigners coming to invest here or to compete on the domestic market, courtesy of trade barriers that are going to be coming down, then we are going to have a whole bunch of local entrepreneurs who are rendered non-competitive. And so that is my worry. Thank you.
Chris, as you respond to the issues that have been raised, I want you to please answer this question. Is it possible to attend to the issues of toxicity? Is it possible to, because colleagues, I hope you share my sentiment. I would love to get out of this place with a sense that with these three passionate conversations that we're having here, we can find each other and begin to say, do we agree there's toxicity? If there is, what do we do? Has there ever been any nation building in this country? If the answer is no, what do we do to build this nation? Because I'm hoping that we're just not wasting time exchanging words, but this is a step towards finding each other. Is there toxicity? Can we deal with it? And you deal with the questions that Tendai has raised.
Trevor, just before Minister comes through, the debt issue, which we are hamstrung with in terms of international, the debt we owe other nations, in terms of the re-engagement issue, I think it would be resolved if you did away with toxicity. Thank you.
And by the way, you are not under inquisition.
Yes.
So.
Look, I'm naturally a politician. I am trying as much as possible to be a businessman. And trying to make you focus on business so that you make money in the new republic, yeah, President Mnangagwa. If you can decide, you make a choice. You follow what I'm listening from my left. We will see each other. Vamutama billionaire vaitedza President Mnangagwa. Vamwe vachingocomplaina zvavari kuita is toxicity, toxicity, toxicity. You will not make money by continuously looking through a review mirror about the past. You make money by seizing the opportunities which are being created now. The infrastructure which is required to make Manize jump from 0 to 10 million tons of steel. Do you understand the scope of the infrastructure which is required? The railways, maybe 55,000 megawatts of electricity, maybe a new dam on the Munyati River. These are the issues which need your mind to be grappling with, to say, how do I find my space in a multi-billion-dollar investment climate which is unfolding in this country? The billionaires who are coming here to put money in lithium, they need infrastructure. We need new ports in Beira. I've been negotiating the new ports in Beira and bring Zimbabwe and Mozambique together. I can't be told about we are investment bankers, we are bringing $2 million US dollars or 10 million US dollars. I can't be told you are investment bankers for these resources. You are an investment banker who goes to Shanghai or to Mumbai to bring 500 million US dollars to build a stainless steel plant. That I can salute as an investment banker. Amus palevu yacho imi muripan. You understand? Amus, and what I am doing, what I'm trying to alert your minds to is that big money on a world class is coming into this country. You now need to marshal your resources to go and build those dams, to go and build those towns around Manize, to go and build, you see, who drove the road from here to Victoria Falls? It's finished. What is happening? Because trucks are carrying coking coal from Wange all the way to ArcelorMittal in South Africa, coking coal on a road. We need a new the road to be revamped. There is enough capital to revamp the railway line in this country so that all that traffic goes off the road to the railway line. These are the opportunities which you should be talking about as investors with NASA, with the old mutual, with everybody. I try to say, can we build a new town on Manize? Nobody responds. Then capital comes from outside to come and build a new capital, a new city at Manize, because you are being told toxicity. If there's toxicity, why are these business people coming and putting billions of dollars in this country? Where's your toxicity? Ingoda iwe chete toxicity yoyo isinga affect billionaires. Elon Musk wants to come and put billions in Zimbabwe's lithium sector. He doesn't understand the word toxicity. He sees opportunity in lithium. What I'm trying to say is that the president has scaled the resource, the appeal of the resources of Zimbabwe to the best global capital in the world today. That's what the president has done. And he's bringing it, this is the capital which will lift this country out of poverty into development. When you have billionaires, you then can trickle up because we are getting big money coming into this country. But if you are being told the elections, you are being told, hey, go to parliament, hey, what is so, and you fix your mind on it as a businessman, and this is exactly the distinction between listening to me and what the president is offering and listening to BT trying to give you a course in politics as if it is a course in business. This is politics, I'm talking business. I thank you.
You said, and I'm quoting you, you said you are a politician who's trying to speak business. Colleagues, could you share by indication of hands anybody who's got a question, a contribution to make so that we include more people? I've been told that we've got about 15 minutes. Whilst we're doing that, Tendai and Nigel, I really want to to engage with the question, how do we lower the political temperature? How do we lower the toxicity? Because you don't realize how where we are is not healthy until you realize that toxicity can kill a democracy. And we need to attend to that. I know you will not agree, business politician, but toxicity does kill a democracy. Are there people that want to engage with the conversation at all? Sure, by raising hands. If not, I know Zimbabwean CEOs can be a bit, no, I'm not going to go there. Let me give, okay, you want to answer?
Yeah, so let me, how do we detoxify Zimbabwe? Our country is torn in half. Whether you go by our own results or by the official results, the fact of the matter is that the country is torn in half. So this is a perfect scenario where dialogue is called for. We need dialogue. We need inclusiveness. We need tolerance. This dialogue must be inclusive. It must take everyone on board. It must take the church. It must take the trade unions. It must take the farmers. It must take a business. It must take capital on board. But we need dialogue. This dialogue must go beyond the sharing of cabinet seats. It must address the national question. What does it mean to be Zimbabwe? What is the Zimbabwe that we are dreaming of? I dream of a Zimbabwe that is united, that is inclusive, a Zimbabwe that can grow a $200 billion GDP economy. I dream of a Zimbabwe where there is tolerance, where we disarm, where we turn these vicious cycles of exclusion into virtuous circles of inclusion. That's what we need to build. So dialogue is important. Dialogue is a starting point. Number two, let's respect the institutions. The Constitution, we've amended it. Even the new Constitution, we've amended it in over 40 amendments in the last 2 years. A Constitution should be sacred. A Constitution should be rules of engagement, respected by all on whatever side of power that you are in. Our institutions are important. The judiciary, the press, all these things are important. Elections delivery systems that deliver, citizens that are empowered. We've created in the Constitution a fourth arm of the state: the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Human Rights Commission, the Gender Commission, the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission. This must have teeth. This must have oversight over the state, oversight over government. So too Parliament. So the starting point is dialogue. The end point is dialogue and inclusion.
Nigel? How do we lower, Tendai has made his contribution, how do we lower the political temperature, toxicity? Tendai is pushing dialogue strongly, an inclusive kind of dialogue. And Chris, as you sit there, I would want you to reflect on this. Is it possible to build this nation? Nation building that is inclusive so that everybody feels involved. Nigel?
You know, Trevor, from an investments perspective, again, I want to emphasize, yes, my little 2 million may be a small balance sheet, but it's worth a whole lot to me. That having been said, I think as Zimbabweans, because we are competing for international capital, and yes, Minister Mtrangwa, yes, we compliment you for what you've brought. We're not denying that. We were together with Milk. Isn't that so? Zim Cyber City. That's another one that I thought you would mention. So we see it. But we're saying how much more could be coming to Zimbabwe? That is the question for me. And from my perspective, my humble perspective, the people that I engage with, the people that could potentially bring money, say very distinctly, are your politicians tone deaf? Do they listen to themselves? In other words, the optics don't look good from the outside looking in. They don't. They cannot look good just to those who have access to Minister Chris. And if Minister Chris did a sterling job in bringing the investors, we are saying, how much more can we all do as CEOs here to bring counterparts? Tuda kupinda umuligi yoyo, minister. Tuda kuita mabillionaire. Tukuzvida chaizvo chaizvo. Ndukunyepe. Million haichakwana. Ndrukuada mabillion. But I'm saying it's not possible under the optics that are seen. And are we tone deaf? Is it impossible for Zimbabweans to sit across the desk and remove this albatross of this debt area around us? We are bankers, Namkomanik. Can we access lines of credit? Hell no. The friends are still there in the banking system. Takatengesa mabanki taona kuti kwapisa. It's too hot in the engine room. Are we together? So I'm saying, yes, what you've done is commendable, but we are asking for more. We are saying, guys, ndimakarwa hondo, but matikuadzawo turikutsitsirirwa. Moita mabillionaire mega here nemaforeigner. Aiwa, nyika inovakwa nani? Anditi muri kutaura kuti na hanzi nyika inovakwa nani? Saka isusu hatisi veneri. What are we saying?
And by the way, they fought the war. But we're not interested in fighting a war.
No, we want to fight
we want to fight the war of poverty and
Exactly.
economic development and growth. We are talking war now, we're not interested in that. We want to get rich also. Toitama billionaires. But Chris, jokes aside, the point that Nigel is raising for me is hugely important. What you do, we're not denying, but we're asking certain questions. Wakaita nani, kupi munani mushite, and that kind of stuff. We're wanting transparency. So we're not saying it's bad what you've done, but to Nigel's point, if what you did, all of us here could do, imagine what would happen to this country. Can we also be included? Or better still, what do we do for us to be included?
I would rather answer the last one. What can we do to be included? I've mentioned it. The president has opened the country's resources to the best possible capital in the world today. They are bringing their money into this country because they are the only ones who can provide, one, the capital, two, the technology, three, the markets, and thirdly, the products to satisfy those markets. I don't want to continue to dwell on Tsingshan, but I told you, when Tsingshan comes and puts a plant of steel in your country, and they are number one in the world, Toyota follows, Mercedes-Benz follows, Nissan follows. This is investment on a world-class scale, where Zimbabwe will position itself to produce powertrains of the new electric vehicles from Zimbabwe, because the guy who has come here to do steel is the best one. I am trying to impress upon you that these are the investments which open up opportunities to a country to move forward. You are trying to see yourself as a competitor to Tsingshan. Then if you make that mistake, then you will not position yourself accordingly, because he has already attained that level in the global marketplace. He's giving an opportunity to this country. I will cite a very specific example, which I spent the last 6 to 7, 8 months talking to a particular bank in this country to raise 60 million to build a power station, a power line from Sherwood to Manise. There are bankers here. There is more than $60 billion in the market of Zimbabwe. They can't supply that money. They say to the company, we want a balance sheet from Shanghai. The guy says, I've built a $150 million furnace in Selu. I've put 400 million in furnaces, in coke batteries in Wange, and I've put 600 million, 800 million in a steel plant in Manize. I am going to create all this output, which would consume that electricity. And then you still want me to bring a balance, my balance sheet from Shanghai. I'm a $60 billion company. Then our banks can't buy it. 2 days ago, Nedbank comes from South Africa, says, oh, is this what happens in this country? Yes, the man. You understand? You are seeing opportunities in your country, but because you are being told it's a toxic environment, you can't open your eyes to these vistas. We need to build a dam at Munyati River to supply the steel plant. We may end up having somebody from outside the region come and build that plant because you are seeing toxicity in opportunities which are stuck. If a man who is investing $2 to $30 billion in your country doesn't see toxicity, why do you always want to see toxicity yourself in your own country? I cite another example. Varun. They spent years trying to get into Zimbabwean market. They couldn't. Then eventually President Mnangagwa comes in. Varun is given opportunities. Within 24 months, they've built 8 production lines. A traditional bottling company which was in this country, which used to sell Coca-Cola can for $1.80, now has to face somebody who supplies cans at 30 cents, 38 cents per company. Do you know what the Varun man from India says? He says, if the money which is available, disposable income in Zimbabwe, this per capita was the same in India, I would be building 8 plants every month in India. He is seeing an opportunity, is we are seeing toxicity. Now, you see, these are the issues which when I made these investments, I did not make them as a minister. How many times have I been, I went to a minister from Gabi in cabinet, I didn't last a year. I've just been back now with 2 weeks as a minister. Don't try to see me as somebody who is in government, as a minister, bring investments. No, I think and act as a businessman. I am from the money school in New York. I'm a banker by training from school. I lived in Brussels, which is the biggest trading center for goods in the world. That's where I started my diplomatic life. I am the founder of the digital economy in Zimbabwe in telecom. That's my other degree. What I'm talking about is I've seen goods and services being traded on the global scale from Brussels. I've seen money from New York being made to drive the world market. I went to China where I saw a medieval country being transformed by foreign direct investment in the shortest period of time. I saw miracles in China. They are more than us. We are less, we have more resources. We can do it. The main thing is if you dwell on toxicity in our minds, and then you are a businessman, you are told toxic, you will sit on your haunches and then do nothing. Don't listen to this message about toxicity. See opportunities and we move forward as a country. I thank you.
Thank you, Chris. My brother Nick has a question. Nick, please, if you could proceed. I'll ask you, gentlemen, starting with Nigel, for your closing remarks. Brief 2 minutes, minute rather. Yes, my brother.
Am I audible? Okay. I think it's a very interesting debate, but my point is just to say it's a bit sad to hear about the Varuns and all those other people. I think when the president says, Nika inovakwa newenevayo, it's a very serious statement. In 2015, the government said, zvinhu zvavingirai ngazvidzorerwe. We are in 2023. Despite a cabinet directive, I still don't have my farms. My institutions are not fully back. But if Varun comes into Zimbabwe and has everything that he wants in a month or two, and in 7 years, I can have what I want, it goes back to what my brother Nigel is saying. Andisi mwene wayo ere. Those are the issues. I think we want to go practical so that we can truly build our country. The Second Republic is opening up for us. And in my thinking, it's not about Vana Varuni, it's about us first. I was chairman of CBZ. Government put me there when CBZ was insolvent. And in 18 months, I managed to bring the IFC. They actually didn't do a due diligence for their investment in CBZ. The IFC had invested in a project, a banking institution that I went to set up in Nigeria. They made their money through what I did in 9 months. When they came to CBZ, they simply said, we've worked with this man, we are investing in CBZ only on condition that he remains chairman. In other words, they were looking at credibility. I'm the one who brought ABSA. It was not Dr. Gono, it was me who brought ABSA into the country. ABSA invested in CBZ. That's how we turned around CBZ. That capital was coming through private hands. And I think that's what Nigel is saying. We have the capacity. We may not have $1 billion sitting on the balance sheet, but we have that capacity, that credibility that will attract money into Zimbabwe without us having to run around. That's my point.
Chris, is that your pay grade or it is? Okay.
Yeah, I understand completely what Dr. and we are very close. Yeah, maybe it's because I'm in cabinet now, he thinks I also should try to bring it up, which I will, about his particular issue. But this is a peculiar issue, and I don't want to cloud the discussions which we'll be having here. My main point, and I want to repeat, the president is bringing world-class capital, which is commensurate to the resources of Zimbabwe. Secondly, we have educated the best population in Africa, in Zimbabwe. And I know, because I'm a war veteran, this is a product of the war veterans' education in Zimbabwe. No country, an African country, which has relied on the budget, GNP, to try to provide universal education has succeeded. In Zimbabwe, we took the organization from the war, People's War. We made people build schools for free because the budget in parliament from Chidzero at that particular time was said, it's too small, we are coming from the war. And we said, we've promised people education during the war, we can't lie. Then we said to Chidzero, take the little money which you have, give the teachers, we build schools for free. There was a competition between the parents building schools, competing against each other in villages to get a teacher from Harare. Harare could not provide enough teachers. We went back to Havana as war veterans, asked Fidel Castro to convert our former military camps into teacher training camps. We trained 6,000 teachers in Havana to come and close the gap between parents building schools and government providing teachers. That's why we have a high human resource index in Zimbabwe. And the template of Zimbabwe's capacity in AI in education is reflected by the performance of the Zimbabwean in the diaspora who has gone there. They are all super achievers regardless of which jurisdiction they are working in the countries, from Dubai to Australia to whatever. So this is a human resource index which can deliver miracles. What does it need? It needs capital, which also is commensurate to their resources at home. And that's what President Mnangagwa has closed as a gap. To get world-class capital, which can make Zimbabweans produce world-class goods made in Zimbabwe for the global market. We have also provided stability. We are being told about toxicity. This is at a superficial level in terms of politics. What you need to understand is Zimbabwe being the only African country which took on the most powerful imperial army of the West in terms of colonialism in Africa and won that war. We built an organizational capacity in Africa which is second to none. We are the most structured society in Africa, period, because you don't win a war against Britain unless you are structured. So we have a very solid state system in Zimbabwe. That's why we can withstand sanctions for many years. But if you want to dwell on the superficiality of toxicity, that's another level. When it is, you look at the core, we are very strong. And that's why capital of that nature of global billionaires comes to Zimbabwe, because they know we are a stable state. You got to look at the positives which we have as a country and start building upon them. But if you continue to daydream about toxicity and why elections are this and why somebody is going to parliament and that, you miss the picture from you mix the woods from the trees. I'm appealing to you. President Mnangagwa is giving tremendous opportunities to this country. Open up and we take advantage of them, and you can then discharge the role which you are doing because you are appreciating what is being done. But if you are negative about what is being, and you don't want to know what's Banise, what's happening at Sabi, what's happening at Wange, what's happening at Mapinge, where we're going to build a world-class battery city from the company which manufactures the fastest trains in the whole world in China. They are building a new city at Mapinge in my home area in Marsh West. If you are oblivious to those opportunities, don't expect to become a billionaire. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nick, your issue pains me. It breaks my heart. And I think the contrast that you draw is so clear, so it pains me. I don't understand the history behind it, but my brother has promised he'll raise it in cabinet now that he's there. It pains me. It really pains me. Nigel, 2 minutes, not 2 minutes really, a minute to close. We are standing in between lunch and these people, eh? And a flight back to Harare.
Absolutely, and I'm going to be on that flight. Quick points. For me, low-hanging fruit. Number one, I implore and petition that the Kadoma Declaration, in terms of the context I understood it with the president in 1998, be put on the table so that we address that. I think it then triggers the second point in terms of inclusivity. We want to be that fast-growing nation. We computed we can't make it in terms of GDP growth if we don't actually put Zim on steroids in a manner that actually trickles down to include all of us. And that money is there. That money can definitely follow what Minister Mtrangwa has said. If billions are coming, then more billions can come. And we want to be part of that game. We really want to. And I think there is commitment on the part of the private sector to give us a fighting chance to be able to compete fairly and squarely with those guys who are coming here. Ultimately, when dividends are paid by these foreign guys, that money actually moves out. And again, you got a balance of payments problem that could emanate in years to come. We need to build a savings base here. We need to make Zimbabwe acceptable in the international global capital markets. Thank you for the opportunity.
Your closing minute remark, Tendai.
Well, thank you. I think that, Chris, you can't run away from the elephant in the living room, which is that we've got a political crisis, which is that our country is arrested and detained by this toxic discourse of violent politics of disunity and intolerance. So we need to fix that. We need to fix that to create a soft landing for our country. This is a country that has seen a coup. We don't want to see another coup. So dialogue is important. Dialogue is important. Dialogue is important. Second thing, it's not enough to say we are bringing in the Chinese or your favorite company, Tsitsangtsung, in Manise. We have a government that has been very unkind to black capital, to local black capital. We have in fact failed to produce black capitalists in this country. We've failed to produce black bourgeois in this country because of a government that has been very paranoid of black capital. Vingirai over there is a good example. My friend Nigel Chanakira is a good example. You're going to speak last. Farai Rodzi, Shingi Munyeza, we have all failed to produce black capital. The richest black men in Zimbabwe can't even stay in Zimbabwe because we are paranoid of black capital. We've failed to produce black capital. You went to the War of Liberation. You know what I'm going to talk about, the National Democratic Revolution. We've failed to embark on a national democratic revolution. And a national democratic revolution in Marxist terms is basically creating capital, black capital, the real construction of Vene. We are happy with Varun. We are happy with Tsingtsongtsung, but we're not happy with Vingirai. We are not happy with Chanakira. We are not happy with Trevor Ngube. We are not happy with Farai Rodzi. That is not good enough. We are not happy with the citizen. That is not good enough.
Thank you. I think you have spoken and closed and opened and closed. Do you still want to talk? Very briefly, eh?
Very briefly. 2004 land reform has hit the agricultural sector. The new land owners have no money completely to the farms which they have been given. We organize the biggest company in the whole world doing tobacco. China Tobacco is the largest, and the Chinese consume more cigarettes than any other country on earth. They come here, they start working with rural people who are the new owners of the land. Today, that industry is $800 million per year. And for many years, the money which all you bankers were talking about, will circulate, is being earned by those peasant farmers who are now 200,000 of them registered with TIMP. Now you're coming to tell me that we are against a black bourgeoisie. That's also a black bourgeoisie in terms of economics. You got to give credit where it is given. And that's what saved land reform. Another quick example, I cited gold. 6 years ago, it was illegal for young people to dig gold in this country. Gondo tumirwa in a new tunics, new shirts, new helmets, new truncheons. Kunoroa na gold umakom. The vice president was in cabinet. I went into that cabinet. I said, we can't do that. This is the tradition of Zimbabwe for 800 years of digging gold. Today, those young people are producing $2 billion worth of gold, which is supporting the currency yedu today. And you are telling me that that company is averse to creating a black middle class. Kana imi, musika gone kuita marimega. Musade kushora opportunity to one government, because young people are making and digging gold. All we now need is to upgrade them and give them the capital to go to the next level. These are opportunities which are very practical, not Zadruta or Wapanapes. Thank you.
Right. Well, that's the thing about debate, isn't it? You state your case, people listen, but clearly, I think there's a sense around the room that that toxicity is an issue. Good people, thank you so much for participating, for listening in the debate. This is the thing about democracy. Hey? Democracy is about tolerance of views that you don't agree with. Democracy is about listening to others and disagreeing and not throwing stones. There were a few insults, Chris, but you were behaved today, not as you were behaved, not too many insults. So Colossians 6:4 did work. But this is my appeal to you, good people. All of you as CEOs, the panelists out there, this is the only home we've got. And Brand Zimbabwe is the only thing that we have. I implore all of us, Chris, if there would be 200 Varoons or Tsiki, what you're talking about, coming up across...
He said no country's names. Don't try to
I can't pronounce the name, sorry, Chris. I can't. The brand Zimbabwe is our brand. Brand Zimbabwe comes from the stories that we tell. Brand Zimbabwe is a cacophony of the pain that Nick Vingirai is experiencing. It's about the pain that Nigel is experiencing. It's about the lived reality of Tendai as far as toxicity is concerned. We need to begin to listen to each other and understand that when somebody is talking, that's their lived reality, that's their pain. And I think for me, Chris, that would be the thing. What you've heard here are people's reality. They are lived reality. There's something that is called, Chris, which you know, is the happiness index. I wonder what would happen if we did take a dipstick of the happiness index of the people that are around here, which would indicate how healthy are we and how happy are we as citizens. Good people, thank you for listening. The culture of disagreeing and agreeing is very important. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was amazingly done by an amazing moderator, a gentleman, a leader, an entrepreneur in his own right, a media man. Gentlemen, you don't need to go anywhere because we're going to play the great game of life. Trevor, thank you. I just wanted to talk about a golf announcement, but in the context of hitting each other or hitting golf balls or bashing each other or toxicity or whatever else. Hi, Chris. Hi, Tendai. Good to see you. Good to see you. Now listen, in my golf bag are 14 clubs. You can choose whichever one you want to bash each other. There's no problem. We can do it right now. There you go, boss. There you go, boss. These are the big sticks. Nigel's an investment banker. He just gets a baby putter. So you can just hold that one, Nigel, because you won't hurt anything except a US dollar. Now, Chris, come over here, boss, because we're playing golf just now. And Tendai, come here. I'm your caddy. In the great game of life and in the great game of golf, we can hit each other or we can play the game. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, they're playing the game. Now, don't go away, Chris. The passion with which you spoke, that's right. You're starting to play the game. I'll even give you these golf clubs. If you guys will talk together, you can choose. But as your caddy today, we want to say thank you. From the CEO Roundtable, we had the most amazing, heartfelt time, I think, with His Excellency yesterday, Tendai. And I know you're not a stranger to being here. And the boldness for you to speak what's on your heart. But Trevor, thank you for allowing us to come into this area. And in no way is anyone diminished. May we please extend a round of golf between the two of you. I think the CEO Roundtable is saying we'd like to have a lunch with you. Keep the conversation going. Nigel, we've been together. Our young friend Nicholas, so much pain in the room, but now it's a time to play. So thank you. Golfers, you know what we're doing just now. There's only one enemy in the room, and that's Kenius Mafukudzi on the golf course.
Sorry, guys, I'd forgotten something. Please join me in thanking Chris, Tendai, and Nigel for making this afternoon awesome. Thank you.
All right. Would you guys like to shake hands over the golf clubs? There you go. Maybe it's time to play. Maybe it's time to play.
You don't want to play golf?
My handicap is I can't play.
His handicap, he can't play. Well, the great game of Zimbabwe brings us together. I think we've got great leaders here. I think it's going to be okay. We've all got different clubs, but there's one game. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable. Thank you for your time.